In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
One of the things that St. Gabriel's does that I've never seen in another church is our little changeless box. And Kyle or somebody will be back in the back this morning with that changeless box. And we encourage folks to put their pocket change in there, or a dollar bill or two. And it makes a difference. Every month we have a different ministry or organization that we support. This month it is the Hall County Food Pantry, which is a wonderful multi-church ministry to the needy in Hall County. So coins can make a difference. So you'd be amazed at how much in a month we can gather in that little box, the changeless box. Well, coins can make a difference. Now, we hear a lot of talk these days in political circles about tax reform, and we'll probably continue to hear that. Today's Day One sermon by Eric Schaefer shared some interesting info about taxes in Jesus' time that I wanted to share with you. The Jews in the first century Palestine, they paid a lot of taxes. They paid the temple tax, they paid land taxes and customs and trade taxes and on and on. And this tax that we're talking about in Matthew 22 was particularly despised by the Jews. It was called the Imperial Tax. It was required as a tribute to Rome to support the empire's occupation of Israel. So think of that for a moment. The Israelites were required to pay their oppressors a yearly tax to support their own oppression. Well, not everyone saw that imperial tax as odious in that way. The Herodians were the local sympathizers with the Roman rulers. It was a family political party that was related to King Herod, the local puppet ruler of the empire. So the Herodians were supported by the Romans. The Herodians supported this particular tax because they benefited from it. They were in place to rule at Rome's behest over their fellow Jews. But the imperial tax was opposed by most, if not all, of Jesus' followers. Many of them were nationalists who found the imperial tax offensive, since it reminded them of their humiliation and degradation and occupation by Rome. Now the Pharisees, they were the religious leaders and experts. They were also a political party. And they didn't have much use for the imperial tax, but they kind of probably grudgingly supported it, since it also helped keep them in power. But it should have been a problem for the Pharisees, who were the experts in the law, because a coin engraved with the image of Emperor Caesar Tiberius was with a proclamation of divinity. The emperor's image and a proclamation that he is divine. That broke the first two of the Ten Commandments. They shouldn't have anything to do with a coin. We talked about the Ten Commandments 2 weeks ago. So in Jesus' time, any conversation about this imperial tax was very divisive and immediately revealed where you stood. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's pretty relevant for today. Well, the Herodians and the Pharisees normally did not get along, but they were united against Jesus. They saw Jesus as a big threat. He had just entered into Jerusalem, and the people loved him. And Jesus was preaching in the temple and stirring up all kinds of trouble for these status quo folks, the Pharisees and Herodians. So they worked together, and they decided to try to trap Jesus, get him in trouble. And so they posed this question. They came to him with this, we know you're so wonderful and you speak the truth and you like that. But he sees right through their malice, it says in the gospel. And so they ask this question about this tax, and they think they've got Jesus trapped, because if he says you should pay this tax, he's going to disappoint his followers. But if he says don't pay this tax, he's going to be in trouble with Rome. So they thought they had it. This is brilliant. But Jesus not only evaded their trap, he trapped them in their own question. Whose face is on this coin? He asked them. And perhaps overeager to advance their own plot, they forgot that by showing the coin with the emperor's face on it, an image, they were revealing their complicity with Rome. Well, Jesus asked, whose image and proclamation adorned the coin? The emperor's, they answered. And everyone hearing this, who knew the Ten Commandments, and they knew that Jesus had just trapped the trappers in their own blasphemy according to Jewish law. And that makes Jesus' response even more biting. He says, give therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. This thing is not of our Jewish faith. And give to God the things that are God's. So Jesus turns the tables on his questioners. He reveals the truth about his accusers while calling them to a higher accountability and a higher fidelity than they even thought possible. But could Jesus also be talking to us in this comment, inviting us to declare our allegiance to God? Perhaps the key question is not whose image is on that coin, but whose image is imprinted on us, whose image is on our hearts. Jesus is here inviting us to declare our allegiance to God. Now, often this text, you'll hear sermons interpreting it as a kind of a dichotomy in our lives, that we have duties to both God and country, including paying our fair share of taxes, and that's true. But I think Jesus is really speaking here more about our duty to God. Now, most of us have political views, some of them strong political views, Democrats or Republicans or independents, but before and above any of these, we are Christians. We are followers of Jesus. And he is, or should be, our first loyalty above all. So Jesus raises some important questions for us, and he doesn't give pat answers. That's the thing that can be frustrating with Jesus sometimes. There are aspects of our lives that indeed should be part of the national order, part of our duty as citizens, and should be rendered to the authorities, to Caesar, so to speak, as Jesus says. But there are other parts of our lives, our very selves, that belong to God alone. And if we remember that, all of life can take on a greater focus and meaning. We belong not to anything in this world, but we belong to God. That means no matter what we may do or say, no matter where we may go, no matter what may happen to us, we are first and foremost and forever God's own beloved children. That's part of the baptismal covenant. We are God's own forever. And if we believe this and live in it, then God's love will shape all that we say and do and all of how we live our lives, even in our response to our duties to our country, even in response to the critical issues that face our country these days. Next week, we begin our stewardship season, and it's not all about money. Money is important, but remember, all of our life belongs to God. Every aspect, our time, our talent, our treasure. And Jesus tells us that we are to render to God what is God's. And since all of life is God's, we serve and love and live in the love and rule of Jesus. So all we have belongs to God. We belong to God. We are God's beloved children forever. And our task in the power of the Holy Spirit is to believe that and to live it. recently received a fundraising letter from a Roman Catholic charity. I don't know how I got on their list, but they keep sending me stuff now. And each time, I've got them 3 times, they send a little coin with an angel on it, front and back. And, you know, it's just a nice reminder that God is watching over you, that God's guardian angel is with you and all like that. Well, yesterday, my granddaughter Haley and I were together. We went to the car show for a little while, and I gave her one of these. And she said, "Grandpa, is it for good luck?" I said, "Well, no, it's just a reminder that you belong to God. You are Christ's own forever. You are a child of God, and that God is always with you. God is always looking over you and is within you." And she said, "Well, that is good luck." And she said, "Oh, no, maybe it's God luck." You see, coins can make a difference in our changeals, in this angel coin, but our lives in the care and power of God can make an even greater difference, now and forever.